for God and those who seek to grow in prayer. What is central to Teresa's teaching about prayer is that it was for her a search for and discovery of God's lavish love, which I shall be returning to often during these topics. Teresa had a very outsized personality during a century when there were many outsized personalities. For example, Martin Luther, Ignatius of Loyola, Henry VIII, Thomas More, Michelangelo, earlier on Ferdinand and Isabella, and many, many more. It was an era in Spain called its Golden Age. Figures like El Greco and Cervantes with his Don Quixote. It was an age of great poetry and drama and music and painting. And there is a Teresa of Avila and her collaborator, John of the Cross, as well as Ignatius of Loyola. Among all of these was Teresa herself, self-made woman whom grace raised up to become a saint, and as I have just mentioned, the very first woman doctor of the Church. She had a great personality. Teresa was warm, outgoing, affectionate, gregarious, energetic, single-minded, a faithful friend to so many, playful and endowed with a lively sense of humor that she so often turned on herself. The French theologian Louis Cogniet noted the paradoxical characteristics of Teresa. These paradoxes make Teresa a very interesting figure for people of numerous faiths and traditions. She appeals across all lines of religion. Let me mention these paradoxes. Teresa was, in so many ways, introverted, and yet extroverted. She brought those together. She was an idealistic woman, but very practical, a skillful administrator, and I might mention, and should be proud of this, a very good cook. The nuns in her monastery were happy when it was Teresa's turn in the kitchen. Teresa was firm, and at times she could be rigorous. But Teresa was ever so human. And Teresa wrote that God doesn't expect us to be, and this is a quotation, completely perfect. Consoling words to us all. In her interior castle, that quotation appears in the 5th Dwelling Places, 3rd and 7th paragraph. To continue about Teresa's paradoxical characteristics, she was feminine to the core of her being, yet called by many, and even hinted at by her own, as in Spanish, varonil, manly. And that's, for many men of the 16th century, that was the highest compliment they could pay this woman from Avila, who so transcended, in many ways, gender in her life. Moreover, Teresa was a single-minded woman who often repeated the need for her and for us to be, in Spanish, determinación determinada, a very determined determination. Let me say that I've extracted from that what Teresa wanted, Teresa got. Here is an example that Teresa could even be determined to get her way when addressing the Lord himself. At age 39, at the time of her first conversion, she wrote later, "I think that I then said that I would not rise from there until he, God, granted what I was begging for." Strong words for a woman who was addressing her Lord and God. Teresa was passionate, a woman of great desires. The Dominican Brian Davies has written,